This week on the Theos Cybernova podcast.
Crypto is recoverable. It is difficult, not impossible. I have lost money to crypto hacks. 100% the full run companies, they have the leaders, directors, just like in any other business company, and they make hundreds of millions of dollars. Cryptocurrencies, they give you an unprecedented transparency compared to traditional finance.
The Theos Cybernova podcast, hosted by Paul Jackson.
Welcome to yet another episode of Theos Cybernova podcast. In season 2, I'm delighted to welcome to the show Jussi, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce your surname, but Jussi, thanks so much for joining me all the way from Finland. Oh, wait, not Finland, but you're in Singapore nowadays, right?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you so much for the welcome, and thank you for having me, of course.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. I've only got to know you fairly recently, and yet I've seen that we have quite similar backgrounds. You were ex-law enforcement, right?
Did a stint over at the National Bureau of Investigation in Finland, based in the FIU and in criminal intelligence. So yeah, law enforcement, FIU, so combined like investigations and financial intelligence and criminal investigations. So very interesting path that led me here where I am today in Singapore.
Right, we'll talk a bit more about that as we go through the conversation today, but I'm going to start by asking the golden question that I always get asked when crypto scams or crypto hacks take place. Are the assets recoverable? Because the general consensus is that once you've lost your crypto, it's gone and there's no chance of getting it back. So what's the truth?
Well, it's a very, very good question. And unfortunately, there is no simple answer to it. But yes, crypto is recoverable. It is difficult, not impossible. It depends on so many different like integers in the mix, like how many spoons there's in the soup, as said. So speed of the recovery efforts, the quality of the evidence you have, cooperation, public and private, and of course the public and private plays a very big role in criminal investigations, as many of the frauds are like related to investment frauds. I would not like to say pig butchery scam because it's called more of romance investment scams nowadays based on new terminology, but business disputes and so forth. Crypto is difficult to recover, but it's recoverable. And with the help of many of the industry players, it has been made a little bit easier than it used to be.
That's fascinating. And I'm really looking forward to digging into that a bit more with you later in this conversation. But I'm going to start by just asking, going back to what you just mentioned about being in law enforcement, what made you make the move to the private sector and how the hell did you end up in the crypto space?
Well, the crypto space, how I ended up there was actually I first landed in the crypto space and then law enforcement. But in my background, I used to work very closely with the public sector anyhow, doing security, doing like reservist stuff and so forth. And then the opportunity came before the FIA AMLD in the Finnish NBI that they were looking for a crypto expert who can help them to build a FIA AMLD like it was going to the European Parliament at the time. So the FIA AMLD directive, and of course after that also the implementation of local legislation into Finnish law once the FIA AMLD comes into force in Europe. But how it happened, they really, really needed crypto training and stuff like that in the police. So kind of wandered off also doing criminal investigations and so forth. But all in all, my crypto background started almost 16 years ago. Next year, 16. Incredible journey. I've been in criminal investigations 10 years. And yeah, so I started as a hobbyist, playing around with mining, doing Bitcoin mining, even with my laptop back in the days was profitable. So it was quite interesting, and like working in the security, cyber investigations, cybersecurity. I already lived in Thailand when I was younger doing government cybersecurity. So kind of all things came into a place when they were looking for somebody who had expertise in the field of crypto. And of course, that's how I ended up in the police. But like all in all, the 15 years, I've seen quite a few ups and downs in the industry, and bear and bull markets on and off.
Yeah. So, look, I'm intrigued. Do you really need to work? You must be a crypto billionaire by now.
Everybody needs to work, it would be boring without doing something you are passionate about. And like being so long in the industry, I have been personally, I have lost money to crypto hacks, and I have also been investigating quite a few. I've been probably scammed a few times, and like making the industry safer for all of the user is something that I'm quite passionate about. So being able to recover, help victims of crime is, of course, an amazing opportunity. And how I ended up in the private sector was, of course, I started to work for Chainalysis and I was head of investigations there. So very closely working with the police and supporting them their investigations, training them how to investigate, seeing the actionable results, how they succeed in cases and how they learn. So I'm quite passionate about helping the industry and helping different like agencies and people to investigate crypto-related incidents.
Well, that your admission there that you've also been victim of scams and frauds must actually give some comfort to those who are listening who've also fallen victim in some form, because it's not easy, is it? I mean, some people say, well, how could you be so stupid to fall victim to a scam? But these guys are clever, aren't they? The fraudsters, the criminals, super clever, right?
Yeah, well, in my case, it was like not so much about like investment or that kind of fraud, or just plain up scam, which is we have the scamdemic assayed. But like in my case, it was like back in the days, I was actually acquiring crypto miners, and this one company came up with new product. I invested small amount, but the product never delivered, so it was kind of a fraud, the whole thing. Some of the people who has been in the mining industry longer remembers maybe Butterfly Labs when they were doing the first FPGA miners. There was a sudden spike in the Bitcoin mining, like efficient, or the Bitcoin mining difficulty, which kind of give people clues that maybe they're using those miners before shipping. And later on, it actually turned out to be true that they used the miners themselves, that they funded with people's money to develop, to kind of build out their machines to like mine themselves some Bitcoins and so forth. So yeah, there's all kind of scams when you come to like unregulated kind of money, as I very loosely would say it's unregulated money still, but like there's different like scenarios, and like victimizing, of course, is the worst thing that can be done. And that's why I also like by Interpol wanted to say, like send a message that we shouldn't using victimizing terms when people fall for different kind of frauds or scams, because that always makes the barrier to report higher. So yeah, anybody can fall for a victim, and the people just unfortunately fall for different kind of, let's say, frauds and scams a little bit without thinking where they're putting their money. They just see the high returns and high investments that they can make a lot of money on, and make hasty decisions without doing proper research.
Yes, I think you're right there that, obviously we both worked in law enforcement, and victim blaming is never the answer. Just going to pause a second there and just say to anybody listening at the moment who's enjoying these conversations to like and subscribe our podcast, because it does make a difference and it gets out to more people that we're able to help and to advise. So please do click that like or subscribe button. We promise it's not a fraud. But let me go back to a point you just raised about working with law enforcement, because that's critical, isn't it? We can't do this alone in the private sector, and we need to collaborate. And I know it's a cliche, the public-private partnership, terms, but I get asked at conferences quite a lot that, why is it that law enforcement seems so helpless when it comes to investigating crypto frauds and thefts? And the general consensus is that law enforcement doesn't seem to really care, because it's an overseas problem, or, the success rate of investigating it is so minimal or so low that it impacts their overall metrics of, success in policing. What are your thoughts around law enforcement and their capabilities and their effectiveness?
Yeah, that's a very good question. You also come from law enforcement, so you understand when you have 200 plus digital asset cases on your table, you just don't have the time to investigate every single second something moves or something is transferred. There's just the backlog is so big. They're overwhelmed. MLAs take years to go through the system. So mutual legal assessment requests, they go always through the justice departments and so forth. Luckily for me, when I was in law enforcement, I was stationed in the FIU, and we of course have the Egmont network and other methodologies that we are able to receive intelligence quite quickly, even abroad. But I also think in many cases it's cost of the investigation, putting the efforts into investigate every single small instant, but collectively try to group the cases into similar buckets and investigate from there to find common methodologies and common operations. On the other hand, crypto requires so specialized tools and training. So many of the police don't even have the funding for this, and the training takes quite a lot of time. So I've been in investigation space for 10 years, and I still don't comprehend everything that is going on there and happening. So yeah, it is a very difficult question, but usually when there's cross-border crime, that also puts different kind of regulations that the law enforcement need to follow in place. And typically the first milestone is there that certain criteria of loss needs to be satisfied, which quite often is not, because it might be, depending on the jurisdiction, $1 million, $5 million, $10 million. So when even the biggest exchanges are located just, for example, in the next country, it's still cross-border crime, and it needs cross-border efforts and this and that. So it's very difficult for just jumping into every single case immediately. They're drowning on cases, of course, but then again, some of my most successful cases came through thinking outside the box. So back then, of course, there was no regulation in place, but coming from law enforcement and reaching out to many of these companies who now, of course, have centralized platforms to do that. Back then, there was none. So you needed to know somebody who knew somebody who could point you to the right direction, or you already had a contact. I done recoveries even by sending email and sending a documented and stamped seizure warrant via email to some of the exchanges and been able to recover funds. So sometimes if, for example, the jurisdiction the law enforcement is operating at allows something like this, then the recovery possibilities are, of course, much higher than in just straight up international law enforcement communication channels. So it depends on the case, but I would say that the biggest issue is that they have so many cases. As mentioned, there's already a terminology for this, scamdemic. So everybody knows that it means that it's so many millions of cases and highly professionalized scammers out there. So it's very difficult to keep up with the pace of work what they are currently receiving.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you're actually well based, aren't you? Really being in Singapore now. With must give a plug to your company, Sphere State, who do excellent work. I mean, I know some of your team. Obviously, I go back quite a long way with some of your team, and I know how good they are at investigating. But you're well placed in Singapore because you're right next to the Interpol cyber headquarters, right? So do you have relationships with them? Because you talked about cross-border issues and really or transnational issues, and really that's the crux of why investigating crypto frauds and scams, etc., is so challenging, right?
Interpol, UNODC, these multinational agencies, they do a lot of events and training for law enforcement at Interpol. They do it here in Singapore. They also do a lot of that across APAC. So I think these large organizations like UN and Interpol, Europol, and so on, they do an amazing job sharing the knowledge, doing workshops, doing training. Also, of course, they have their own action days, and they do a lot of action around these main and larger kind of institutionalized criminals already. They have so many hats to wear also at Interpol. Crypto is just one of them. Of course, it's a very good center of knowledge, a very good center of sharing knowledge. And of course, they also have quite a lot of good ways to help you in cases. So of course we work very closely with them and we share intelligence with them. And sometimes you need to reach out to them that, hey, I have a case in country X. Can you help me to put me through to the right officer in that country? And they help very often to support those cases because they kind of know that the officer will get free training on top of that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Before we move on to talk perhaps about some of the most common types of crypto fraud you're seeing, just a quick one on your company, Sphere State. Where does that name come from, Sphere State?
We are spearheading many things, and then of course crypto investigation is just one part of the company because it's Spear State Group. So we have different categories what we do and where we are located at. But like I lead the crypto investigation function for us. We also do traditional business disputes, litigations, traditional financial investigations. We do asset searches, physical assets. So kind of that is the good combo from the crypto space also to the physical asset world, that if we have a suspect in country X and we want to identify what kind of assets that person is having, what kind of lifestyle they're doing and so forth. So if you're able to identify 100% that this person is behind, for example, this crime, we are also able to then to use on some of our on-ground people to identify like probable assets that belongs to this perpetrator. So we kind of combine the on-chain and off-chain elements to the investigations, which of course helps then the end victim to hopefully recover some of their assets that they lost in different scenarios.
Right, and I think our regular listeners are now probably starting to join dots as to why we know each other, etc. Because obviously here at Theos we do deep dive technical investigations into hacks, breaches, incident responses, etc. But we don't follow the funds. We have to rely on true experts like yourselves to follow stolen assets, be they crypto or normal money.
Yeah, and this happens more often than you think. Like we have clients from like even the bank industry who has cyber incidents where funds are lost in either traditional fiat money or even nowadays in crypto. So if people lose funds to regular opportunity scammers or investment frauds, but so do big institutions also. So that's why we kind of need each other there. There's so many separate fields to specialize in, like in the cyber side, in the cybersecurity side, on like the real life and real events that happen, like if people walk into an office, like the physical side. And then, of course, we have the crypto side where we trace the funds on chain and what happens on the blockchains.
Yeah, no, it's super important. I'm glad that you are based out here in Asia because there's a lot of victims out here that need help from a company like yours. So let's talk about these frauds. So has this really evolved, or are we just seeing the same old techniques that are still effective? Or what are you seeing most commonly in crypto fraud at the moment?
Yeah, so these romance investment scams, of course, have been professionalized. So it is big call centers, big like professionalism behind it. Sometimes even there is a little bit of protection of these kind of like super institutionalized and I would almost say companies that run these operations, because we are aware that they are also sometimes even nation backed, that there might be nation state actors that run these centers that do 24/7 investment frauds, investment platforms, romance investment hybrids, off-chain, on-chain brokers, and so forth.
Yeah, and we talk about organized crime, but it truly is, when it comes to the cyber world, truly is organized, right? They're structured almost like your average company, with HR, with recruitment, with CFOs, and it's when I've seen insights into these organized crime groups that commit these types of romance scams, etc., and other types of fraud, it really is quite staggering how well set up they are and how professional, if you can call them that, as criminals, but in what they do.
100%. Yeah. The full-run companies, they have the leaders, directors, just like in any other business company, and they make hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yes, they do. And that's half the problem, isn't it, when we're battling this, such well-organized and structured entities. Could you describe a challenging investigation that you've worked on, and what made it kind of complex?
Yeah, I can kind of not describe it. I can describe in general ways, but like, yeah.
Anonymize it, yeah.
Typically, like I can use a loosely tied connection to a real life case where actually a private individual fell into a hack, and this hack was actually done by a nation state. So it was quite intriguing to see that these nation state actors also target individual wallets. And that was very surprising because the funds didn't move for quite some time. But once they start to move, I was very quickly able to identify which nation state attacker was behind this because of the money laundering typology. So we have cross-chain hopping. So we go through bridges, we go even through some of the mixing services. So mixing services, of course, being those that obfuscate the source and destination of funds. Some of the bridges actually do quite similar things, but you're kind of able to track them where the new funds have been issued and where the funds are being distributed after the new funds have been issued. Some of them are highly automated, which of course makes the tracking ever so more difficult because the funds move so quickly through this whole process. So the whole money laundering typologies and layering techniques and structure are automated, which will take then a manual investigator much more longer time to figure out. Of course, we have built some internal tools to be able to detect and to be able to kind of identify some of these typologies as they move, but it is still like a very probabilistic approach. And when you're going through like multiple blockchains via different bridges using automated and manual typologies, it's quite difficult to stay track on the real actual assets that were either stolen or defrauded. But in this case, it was actually stolen via a malware that was installed within it was an iPhone. So it was even more surprising that the malware was within an iPhone, and when the person backed up their crypto wallet, the seed phrase was stolen during the backup process, and that person had more than like $20-ish million in that wallet, and that the laundering process then enabled us to kind of identify that it was actually a very well-known nation state actor. So to me, it came as a surprise that they also do this very kind of low entry level thefts, but like the sophistication came through the malware that was actually installed on an iPhone, which is not that easy if you know about cybersecurity, that getting a malware into an iPhone or even an Android is not that easy. So the complexity maybe is more from first identifying how the MO was done and how it was compromised. Then, of course, parallel laundering paths to see it going into bridges, mixers, which is, of course, obfuscation techniques. Then you need to build custom tooling to identify some of the demixing flows. That, of course, is a little bit easier nowadays with the help of some sophistication within the LLMs and some of that can be done, like decompiling some of those laundering paths with like an LLM makes the job a little bit quicker. But then once you have identified and been able to decompile the obfuscation techniques and trails, then comes the international cooperation between exchanges, potentially law enforcement. Is the person going to law enforcement? Are they going down the civil court route? Then delays and relying on the goodwill to the exchanges to keep the funds frozen or the seizure or complementary freeze in place. That is also quite time critical. So it's always like a multiple different piece needs to come together. But like when you do the tracing properly, not relying too much on some of the automation tools that are out there, that you're actually able to definitely say that these are the actual funds, like with the last in first out trace or first in, first out trace, instead of saying that this address is somewhat involved based on aggregated heuristics. So attribution is possible, of course, because of the matching the patterns to previously known laundering techniques and paths, but also a lot of collaboration within the industry, and also again with the private and public sector cooperation. That is pretty much most often how we lead to successful cases.
Well, that all sounds very easy.
Yeah.
No, but joking aside, are you getting good cooperation from the exchanges? Because I guess there's those that cooperate more readily and those that may be a bit tougher. Is that because that's the key, really, isn't it? To getting funds restored, is the cooperation really of the exchanges?
I would say, again, the industry has evolved quite a bit in the past 10 years. So like I said, back in the day, sending an email with a seizure warrant with a couple of stamps from the DCI would be enough. Nowadays, of course, we have regulation, we have PII regulation in place, we have exchanges have been more institutionalized, and they need to follow different kind of set of rules. So of course that makes it a little bit more challenging. Some of the exchanges are not so accepting to private sector investigators to do complementary freezers than others. But typically when we work on a case, almost the first thing what we do is identify investigator within the jurisdiction where the victim is, to get the law enforcement, or if they come through or legal firm, then we might already have some civil court orders in place. That helps, and then you can reach out that, hey, there's a civil court order coming from this and that. Of course, some of the exchanges are much more willing to cooperate still on good faith than others. But then again, it so much depends on the case and, for example, the publicity of the case, how willing they are to cooperate. But it's a very delicate balance, because they also have their set of rules and their set of legislation that they nowadays need to follow.
Agree. You raised an interesting point about the legal side of things, because obviously often we need to involve law firms in this. Do you have go-to partners in law firms that have got the right expertise in this space?
Yes, we work with many of the big law firms throughout Southeast Asia, and we have gotten very good results with them. And again, it depends on the amount of expertise required, what type of case it is, and what kind of funds and amount of funds were lost. But we do have very good partners within the legal community, and we work with many of the biggest law firms throughout Southeast Asia.
Oh, that's very good. Yeah, because I often get asked this question, which law firms are the best in terms of understanding what is a very complex, issue. And I don't know if you want to name any, you probably don't on the podcast, but certainly anybody could reach out to you if they are looking for legal help, unless you do want to name any.
Yeah, so let's say that I always try to be neutral and respect all of our partners and all of our clients also. It depends so much on the case. In some cases, people reach out to me that, hey, want to do this and that. What law firm might be the best for us? And can quite easily say that you don't need a law firm. I can write you the documentation you need. Or then, okay, you need a civil court order from this and that place. This might be the best solution for your budget and for your loss or for your case. It so depends. But we work with all of the big ones and a lot of smaller ones also, and we're happy to work with the ones that need. So I think would say that when we're gonna be talking about tools soon, there will be a good bridge to build here, that you need to be tool agnostic, that you're able to reproduce those results dependent on which way you go, left or right.
Well, that's a good segue into the tool side of things. I mean, tools, just like us in DFIR forensics work, are critical, right? Getting the right tools. Very often here at Theos, we script our own. We have a very talented DFIR lead who knows how to that speed is important, and we get the best results through tweaking our own versions of tools, etc. And I guess some similarities there, that there will be tools that are off the shelf kind of thing, but there's also, the ways that you adapt it in your own work. Am I right?
Yeah, so the tool industry, when I started in the investigation space about 10 years ago, it was quite narrow. So there was only a couple of tool providers, some upcoming that are already gone and so forth. But nowadays, there's at least 10, 15 different tool providers, and they all have their own strengths. So it depends on what you're looking from like a budgetary need, which market areas you're looking at, because some of the tools are stronger in different market areas, even localized data, localized like over-the-counter trading platforms, localized OSINT on like darknet markets and darknet industries. Some of them have better data on Europe, some of them have better data on the Americas. So again, it depends on the requirements of yourself. I have used pretty much all of the tools out there, and there's of course, like I would say that there's like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 tools. And like I said, I want to be very tool agnostic here. I'm not going to be promoting any tool specifically. But like, again, it depends on your needs. Some of them are very highly technically sophisticated that you can do very, very accurate tracing. Some of them have amazing knowledge of entities. Some of them have very good other capabilities. But of course, some of them also comes with a very high price tag. Some comes with a bit lower. I would say as general, the crazy pricing of tooling, those days are over. And as there's so many tools out there, it's getting very competitive, the space. So many of the tool providers have needed to drop their pricing, and also the price point for getting a reliable basic level tool is somewhat reasonable nowadays. So you don't need to spend like 100 grand getting one tool, but instead you can get pretty good tools for like 10 to 15 grand per license. But it's still quite expensive. And I said when law enforcement need tools, they typically need more than 1 or 2 licenses. They might need like 50 or 100 licenses. So at the end of the day, it still comes very costly.
It does. And there's so many parallels between the work we do, the top tiers you mentioned, the other tools that are nice to have kind of thing for specific cases. But it's really, at the end of the day, though, I think to draw a line under this conversation, it's about the people using them. And it's about, being able to make the right decisions on the right tools for the right investigation. And, I don't think I'd recommend anybody to go out and buy DFIR tools in the same way I wouldn't recommend them to go out and buy crypto investigation tools. I would say go to the right people to help you who know how to use them properly and get the best out of them. So switching gears, North Korea, right? We frequently seems to be synonymous with crypto frauds and thefts in the news. How accurate is this, and what can you tell us about their activities?
Well, I would have to say that they are indeed a very interesting actor on any kind of cyber-enabled or cyber-related, and also nowadays crypto-related incidents and crime. Very active. It's a little bit hot potato around the industry, but of course we know that Lazarus has been active for quite a few years, APT38 also quite a few years. Typically, when something big happens, quite a few are very eager already to point out who the actor is behind those kind of incidents. And definitely, when you look at the reports, I think like couple of past years, we are talking $3-4 billion in crypto-related hacks and stolen funds that we are aware of that they have stolen. But as mentioned already, like we also see like different kind of other incidents that are not directly related, but with likelihood might be done by DPRK or one of these highly structured sub-entities. They're very well funded. So they operate, of course, from different continents, typically where there might be a little bit of political restlessness that might not have very structured framework around crypto, but they are very active. Yes, like I said, it's a little bit hot potato here, trying to avoid maybe even unintentionally disclose too much, but yeah, they of course, their motive is bypassing sanctions and funding state operations, mainly their WMD programs. So when you imagine them doing billions of dollars past years in different kind of crypto-related attacks and in stolen and fraud funds, they are also very well funded, and they have a lot of funding coming from these incidents.
So this links in with a question I was going to ask you on money laundering. I mean, how do they get the illicit crypto funds back into the monetary system?
That's a good question. The funny thing here is that they are actually quite transparent on their fund movements. They use typically few mixers, few cross-chain bridges before they kind of like dilute the funds into different like exit points where they then exchange those for real currencies or whatever is in their interest at that time. But like they're surprisingly like they don't care if some of the accounts get caught or frozen because they have those in such amplitude. Some of them might be done years and years ago already, just being dormant for a long time. Might be real people, real stolen identities, might be people in vulnerable positions that has been like given them or unknowingly sold their like KYC documentation, verified them to exchanges just for a small tip. So the ways how the money is flowing out from the system, that is, I would say, much more complicated than you would imagine. And unfortunately, there is still a lot of uncompliant exchanges and exit and entry gateways that are kind of satisfying the current need, what they have. And we have quite a big nations and states that are completely sanctioned and cut off from the monetary systems, which some of the other nations are then maybe not following the same sanctions list. Like we have the UN sanctions list, we have the OFAC sanctions list, and so forth. Not all of these necessarily go hand in hand. So there's quite a few like ways how to still get funds out, and like I said, some of these transactions are very transparent and not that difficult to trace and track. But like when you have, for example, some nations that are more compliant than others, it doesn't seem to be overly too complicated to get those funds out. And I have to say that on top of that, because of their multiple levels of layering and sending funds, they might even use legitimate exchanges to take out small amounts, but like because they come to 100% like KYC'd and like legitimate accounts, nothing really flags out at that time because the tracking and tracing takes some time, and when they have a lot of automation and scripting and so forth behind all of the fund movements, the funds might be out through even known and very well respected exchanges even before they even realize that had happened.
Yes, wow. I mean, you just highlighted one of the issues with the whole crypto blockchain space is the perception. You know, it is legitimate, but unfortunately, the perception is it's really used for illicit purposes, for money laundering, for criminal proceeds of criminal activity, and for other scams, etc. And that is one of the biggest challenges I think that the whole space has to face and overcome before it becomes accepted in legitimate mainstream finance, right?
But again, like cryptos and cryptocurrencies, they give you an unprecedented transparency compared to traditional finance. So when you look on the traditional financial investigations, you see only one or two accounts. If they were in the same country, you might be able to see 5 or 6 accounts. But then again, cryptocurrencies, you can see when the whole spending pattern goes to multiple different jurisdictions, multiple kind of addresses, which can be considered bank accounts. You're able to get that data quite quickly, and you're able to track and trace those funds quite quickly. So this kind of transparency, when you compare to traditional banking and, for example, cash, was never heard of. So again, like cryptocurrencies also enables you to have this level of like like visibility into the whole ecosystem. And of course, that is where we also rely on when we do our recovery investigations and our tracking and tracing, that we see where the funds are moving, we see where they are dormant, we see what we can do, for example, if they're dormant in a different kind of assets in different kind of addresses. There's multiple different ways also to recover those funds. So that kind of like transparency we didn't have in the traditional finance.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah, the old suitcase full of cash is a lot harder to trace than crypto. So, look, we could probably talk for hours on this, but we're bumping up against time here. And you see, I'm so honored that, you told me before we started that this was your first ever podcast. So I'm truly honored that you decided to spend it with me, and the suitcase full of cash is on its way to you right now as we speak. But no, but let me just close up by asking you a question I ask all my guests. The regular audience will know that I'm a music lover, and it's by way of sort of decompressing at the end of the day. And now, to anybody, because you're from Finland, so to anybody who's ever listened to the Eurovision Song Contest and in particular the Finnish entries for the Eurovision Song Contest, will know that your answer to this question is going to be a little bit bizarre. So come on, Jussi, what are you currently listening to music-wise?
Well, I will not say the hardest of hard rocks, but I'm a rock fan actually. I go all the way from the 70s rock up till recent. So like anywhere from Creedence Clearwater Revival, The Doors, AC/DC. And then of course we have a lot of Finnish rock bands, but I also listen to R&B, dance music, stuff like that. So I have quite a large venue when it comes to music. I also love have my very good audio set up myself. But essentially, when having a few beers, listening to like old classic rock, a little bit newer rock. So I would say more of a rock and roll rock guy.
Brilliant. Well, I do hope that one of these days we can, listen to a few tunes and grab a beer together, because we clearly have similar tastes and backgrounds. Jussi, thank you once again so much for joining us. And if anyone in the audience wants to have any follow-up questions, there will be links to contact Jussi and his company, Sphere State. And thank you again for joining me today. And, wish you all the best.
My absolute pleasure. And thank you for having me.
Theos Cybernova was presented by myself, Paul Jackson. The studio engineer and editor was Roy DeMonte. The executive producer was myself and Ian Carlos. And this podcast is a co-production between Theos Cyber and W4 Podcast Studio in Dubai.
The Theos Cybernova Podcast.